surround yourself with a group of mentors, people that have been there, done that, especially if you can find people that are in a similar space, and get them on your team, as far as just as a mentor. Create a mastermind group so that you have smart people that you can go to that can help you along your path as you're starting down your entrepreneurship path. It's always best to learn from those who have been there, done that, and you can learn from their mistakes, and oftentimes it will catapult your success.
Hey everyone, this is Devin Miller here with another episode of The Inventive Journey. I'm your host, Devin Miller, the serial entrepreneur that's grown several startups into 7- and 8-figure businesses, as well as a founder and CEO of Miller IP Law, where he helps startups and small businesses with their patents and trademarks. If you ever need help with yours, just go to strategymeeting.com, grab some time with us to chat, and we're always here to help. Now, today we've got another great guest on the podcast, Shane Baldwin. And Shane grew up always wanting to be an entrepreneur. So started off selling logo golf balls in high school. Then went off to serve a religious mission for his church in South Africa. Came back and worked for and opened up a few stores for a company called Clean Flakes, and did that, and then sold off his ownership. Went into work for Merrill Lynch, and then started his own investment firm around 2007. And then Feds started to investigate him, had some legal troubles, and went through those issues. And then after coming out of that, started a door-to-door sales company, sold that interest, and is now writing a book about some of his experiences with the judicial system. So with that much as an introduction, welcome on the podcast, Shane.
Man, you nailed it at all. So great job, Devin.
Absolutely. Have the innate ability to condense everybody's life into 30 or 45 seconds. But no, why don't we rewind and unpack that a bit, and tell us a little bit about your journey and how it got started wanting to be an entrepreneur.
Man, I can remember even at a young age, I wanted to make money. I remember my parents went out of town. I was probably 10 or 11 years old, and they had me staying at a friend's house, which was close by to their house. And I cracked a window open on purpose because my plan was I'm going to go back in and I'm going to have a yard sale while my parents are out of town. And that's exactly what I did. And so when they came home, they were asking where some stuff had gone missing. And I said, oh, I had a yard sale with your stuff. So I've always been entrepreneurial. I've always, wanted to make money, and that's been, part of my journey. And some of it has been very successful, and other parts of it have not. And I think that's part of being an entrepreneur, is not only the successes, but I think we also have big mistakes that happen and failures that happen. And it's part of the journey if you're willing to take that risk.
No, I think makes or sounds like quite the journey you've had. So you started out doing the yard sale. I can't imagine if that was my kid, I came home and all my stuff was had been sold, I probably would be less than excited about it. But sounds like it was a good opportunity for you to make a bit of money. So now you get, or fast forward just a little bit, you get into high school and you continue to go down the entrepreneur path. And I think you mentioned that you started selling golf balls and doing some logo design on some of that. Is that right?
Yeah. And so I met a guy that worked for Titleist, and he was the Titleist rep here in Utah. And I just asked him, hey, what do you give? I know if somebody buys bulk from Titleist, there's a certain price point that you give. And he said, there is. And I'm like, different than the retail that, you obviously are selling it to the country club and these other golf stores at a certain price. They mark it up and sell it at retail. Would you be willing to sell it to me at your wholesale cost? And also, what would it cost to put a logo on it? And he said, it doesn't cost us anything more. I can give you the same price with a logo. And so I started knocking business to business and selling golf balls with people's logo on it. So I would knock on Miller IP Law and say, hey, you can give this to your clients, so put your logo on it, and I would charge you the retail price, let's call it $60 a box, and I was
Mm,
getting it for $40 and I was making $20. And so I had that business going, and it was a great business for somebody that was just, in high school, trying to make money. And I learned some really important things about sales.
mm.
And so sales has just been a part of who I am. And I think when you look at a lot of entrepreneurs, what you'll find is there are also pretty good salespeople. So learning the art of sales, if you're an entrepreneur, you want to start that business, knowing sales can be a really valuable asset.
No, I definitely agree. I think that no matter what business you're in, sales always provides an opportunity to always have a job, because there's always a need for selling different products and services. So you go,
Right.
or you do that during high school, find that as a good opportunity, and then afterwards, I think you graduated high school and went off to serve a religious mission for your church.
Yep. So I went to South Africa for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Did that from 1999 to 2001. And again, that was really honed in my sales skills there. I mean, selling religion, especially that religion, it's a tough order, or it's a tough call.
Sure.
It's a tough thing. So a lot of people don't want to switch up on their religious beliefs. So
No, it certainly gives you good experience for talking with a lot of people, get in front of them, and be able to to hone in a lot of those skills. So you did that for a couple of years, come back from South Africa. Now walk us through kind of what was the next phase of the journey, or where did you go from there?
yeah, so I came home from that experience, and I remember I was watching a movie on the airplane, and I noticed that anytime that there was a swear word, it kind of muted. And I
Mhm.
thought, oh, that's amazing. During the last 2 years, what they've done is they've decided to allow people to watch edited movies. So when I came home, I was looking for it, and it really didn't exist. So I ended up talking to some guys that were just getting ready to launch a business called Cleanflix. There would be
Mm.
a video rental store where they would rent, rated R movies, take out the swearing, sex, and nudity, and rent them to all the Mormons in the land. And I said I wanted in, and so I got in on the business. I had a number of locations with them that I ran, and that's what I did during college. And in 2004, we got sued. I think it was in 2003, and we went through this process of a lawsuit, and we won the first go round. And I
Mm.
thought, okay, this is my time to exit. So I exited because I knew that further lawsuits would ensue, and they did. And then that business ended up not being a business, and that turned into things like VidAngel, and some other things came out that would have replaced Cleanflix. And today there are no video rental stores. People stream everything. So I did that, sold that business, and then I got offered a job in 2004
Mm.
to go work with my dad at Merrill Lynch.
Now you say, and sounds like you probably timed it right. I mean, getting out before the lawsuit or lawsuits shut down in business is probably good timing, and so you did that. And then what took you to Merrill Lynch? Was it, hey, Dad said this was a good opportunity, or always want to do it, or kind of how did you decide once you got out of that business? Kind of what would be the next phase?
Yeah, I think my whole life the dream was, hey, I'm going to work with my dad. And at Merrill Lynch, you could kind of be an entrepreneur. Yes, you work for a big company, but you still controlled your own schedule and you built your own business. And so it's kind of like you're not an entrepreneur, but an intrapreneur. So you own your own business inside of a business.
Mm.
And so my whole job there at Merrill Lynch was just to go raise money to convince super rich guys that had their money at Wells Fargo or Chase or Goldman Sachs, and convince them to move it to Merrill Lynch.
Mm.
So that was my whole function at Merrill Lynch. My job was to go and find the fish, catch the fish, and then my dad would cook the fish. That was the way that the relationship worked. When I showed up there, he was managing about 50 million under management, assets under management. In a 3-year period, we built it up to 650 million. And so I had some skills that my dad didn't have, and he has skills that I don't have. He's way smarter than I am when it comes to the financial markets and managing money. But in 2007, the entrepreneurial bug was biting at me. And during 2004 to 2007, while I was at Merrill Lynch, I was doing some land development on the side. And anytime I would do a deal like that, I would have to get permission from Merrill Lynch. And pretty soon Merrill Lynch just said, hey, you can't you pick one. You can't be doing real estate and working here at Merrill Lynch. And so in April of 07, I picked to leave and go be a land developer. And 3 months later, the market fell apart and this new business I started was not going to happen. And I needed to pivot, but I didn't know what to pivot to. But I remember as I was searching to figure out what to do, I had this prompting or inspiration, whatever you want to call it, to read the Wall Street Journal cover to cover every day. Devin, I don't know if you've ever read a newspaper cover to cover. It takes much longer than you would think. So
well, I probably have some point in my life, but not very often. Usually you just go to the sections that you find interesting or that you want to read, and then you disregard the rest of it. But it sounds like you put in the time and effort to go through all of it.
Yeah, and it took about 4 or 5 months of reading the Wall Street Journal cover to cover until I uncovered my opportunity. And I was reading an article about a bank that had failed. And I thought to myself, if I had let's say I had a car loan, a $20,000 car loan with that bank, and the bank failed, like what happens to my loan? Where does it go? Who do I pay? All of those questions, right? So I called the FDIC. I'm 27 years old. And I just said, hey, I saw you. It was the third bank to have failed. I said, I saw you took over this bank. What do you guys do? Like if I had a car loan like that? They're like, oh, we sell it. I said, well, who do you sell it to? They said the private market. I said, like anybody, like investors? They're like, yep. I'm like, what do you sell it? They're like 10 cents a car loan, 10 cents on the dollar. I'm like, $2,000, and they still owe 20. And I own and I have the title in my possession. They're like, yep. I'm like, okay, do you do that with real estate? And they said they did. And so I signed up for their platforms and started looking at deals where I could buy the note at a discount that was secured by an underlying piece of real estate. It took me about 6 months to get my deal done because I couldn't get anybody to invest any money with me because the market was kind of sketchy at the time, and understanding the note buying business was not something that people really understood. And more importantly, I had done 0 deals. I had no track record. And so I met with a guy, one of my mentors, super rich guy. I said, man, I can't get anybody to give me any money. And he said, Shane, you played football in high school, right? I said, yeah. He said, you ever score a touchdown without the football? I'm like, no. He says, you got to get the football. And what he meant by that is you got to get a deal. You got to tie up a deal. You got to have the football in your possession. And so that's what I did. I tied up a deal, and I got somebody to come in on that deal. And before I knew it, I was off to the races. And by 2012, I'd purchased $800 million worth of bad debt secured by real estate all over the country. However, I had done some things that I shouldn't have done. I wasn't upfront and honest with some investors on some of the investments that we made. I put myself in a position where I would have to raise $20 million in 48 hours. And if I didn't, I lost several $1,000,000. So I said and did whatever somebody says and does to not lose a couple $1,000,000. And that's not the right thing. And so in 2012, the FBI decided to investigate me. They offered me a deal to go, you're an attorney, so you kind of understand this lingo. They offered me a plea deal to go to like a federal camp and take my golf clubs. I think you could even have a cell phone in there and maybe do 20, 30 months. And I turned it down. They held a grand jury and they decided not to indict me in 2012. And so for me, that was like, but I was gun shy. I shut down that business. I divested myself from that business. I assigned assets to investors to mitigate lawsuits. And I just did whatever I could to try and right my wrongs. But there were so many wrongs, it was hard to right all of them. And so
now let me just one question, without having to dive into, not pouring salt in the wound or reliving that.
No, you can ask me anything.
No, but I mean, so kind of, because I think that a lot of times, and don't know, or the specifics on yours, that you kind of get into that, and part of what it is, it's a death by a thousand cuts, right? So in other words, it's just this one time, or I just need to, or I've got to get it this far, and then I'll be fine, and those type of things. And so it's not necessarily you set out with the intent of creating all these issues, but then you keep kind of incrementally going along. But how did you kind of get into that situation to where it went from you were being an entrepreneur, having success, to now having to deal with a lot of the legal issues, and kind of how did that transpire for you?
Yeah, I think as I look back on it, it was out of fear. And I would not give them all the information on a deal. I would only give them the best information. Or I'll give you an example. I had to go raise $22 million. I had $2 million at risk. I had to close on this thing in 72 hours. I didn't have the money. So I call a buddy and I'm like, hey, and he'd bought stuff from me before. I said, I need you to give me an LOI, which is a letter of intent, that you're going to buy this property from me for $30+ million in the next, 60 to 90 days. So I can use that, even though know you're not going to perform on it, but I can use that to go and raise the money. And that's fraud. And so it's little things like that I was doing to deceive the investors, because, I thought, oh, this deal's going to work out anyways. It's not going to matter, until it doesn't, until you buy a condo tail development in Steamboat Springs, Colorado, and you realize no matter how nice it was, in 2011, there was nobody wanting to buy a second, third, fourth home in Steamboat Springs, Colorado. And I've got expensive debt. I've got this equity that has these kind of expectations of it being a short-term deal. And it wasn't. And truthfully, if I would have owned up in that moment and said, you know what, I totally screwed up. I've lied to these guys. I can see that we're not going to be able to make this deal work right now. And if I would have gone back to my partners, to my investors, who, by the way, they all like me. I had a great relationship with them. Super, super wealthy guys. And if I would have just said, guys, I lied to you, this is what I did, and this is where we're at, they would have been mad at first, but then they would have said, okay, cool. Well, let's figure this thing out. Instead, I kept telling them that it's okay. Don't worry about it. We'll get it figured out. Because in my mind, I kept telling myself, Shane, you always figure it out. You always figure it out. You got the Midas touch. And I didn't come to grips with the reality. And the reality was, the only way that deal was going to be successful is if we held it for a long-term period, restructured the debt, did all sorts of things that I wasn't accustomed to doing. And so it's like those little things that you do. And like you said, it's death by a thousand cuts. It's just like you compromise here, and then you have to compromise some more. And then you just get to the point to where you've made it so bad that you're all cut up and you're bleeding everywhere. And it's hard to put a Band-Aid on that.
No, I definitely understand. And, I said it's a double edge. If you're on the other side and you're the one that feeling defrauded, you don't really care that there was good intention. And so it's kind of one where I think that, to your point, the best thing, and that's usually the advice an attorney will give you, is, it's much better to own up to it before you get caught than wait till you get caught, because at that point, nobody's going to believe you and you've lost all credibility. So now you got investigated by federal government. I think, you went through, they didn't end up pursuing things, thought you were in the clear. And then you came, or I think, as we talked a little bit before, the state came around and had a different opinion.
Yeah. In 2015, I'm probably 6 months from I think on securities fraud type stuff, the statute of limitations, I think, is 5 years. So I'm close to the statute of limitations running up on this stuff. And the state of Utah decided to file 17 second-degree felonies against me, securities fraud related. And I found myself in Salt Lake County Jail, a place where I've never been before. And trust me, it's a place you don't want to be. And truthfully, I thought my life's over. My wife of 13 years, about 60 days into my incarceration, showed up and said, hey, I'm filing for divorce. And so it was like, at that point, everything in my life was completely falling apart. And, all of the success that I had came to a screeching halt. because now my reputation is ruined, and my life, I thought at that moment in time, was absolutely ruined. And in fact, I started down a quest of trying to figure out how to end my life. So I start talking to other inmates like, hey, how do you kill yourself in here? And it's not easy. I mean, that's what I learned. It's not easy. If you want to attempt suicide in jail, it's pretty hard. I mean, they're like, hey, you can hang yourself, but you got to kneel down and tie it to a top bunk and not stand up. I'm like, I'll stand up. They're like, well, you can jump off this tier. It's like a 15-foot drop and try to land on your head. I'm like, I'll be paralyzed if I try that. So I came up with my own plan. And my own plan was, I'm just not going to eat or drink for as long as I can possibly go. And contrary to what the internet will tell you, I mean, I went 13 days, no food, no water. And at that point, I knelt down and I just pled with God to stop my heart from beating. I fell asleep, and in my book, it's called The Honest Lie, and it kind of chronicles my journey. What was interesting is during that same time of that fast that I was on is when I wrote the majority of my book. In fact, I've got right here, this is the original manuscript that I wrote in prison of my book. And you'll see it's in pencil. I don't know if you can see that, but you can see there, I didn't have an eraser. And it's like all of the self-help books that I had read, you know, Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich, or Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People. All that information was just flooding through me at that time. And I was writing those things down at the very same time. I'm at the lowest moment of my life. And ultimately I had a dream, and I won't spoil what's in my book. And you can find my book. It's called The Honest Lie. You can find it. In fact, it's right here. This is a copy of my book right here. You can find it on Amazon. But in this dream, I was told that I would be there for the next 5 years. And I was shown exactly how it would go for the next 5 years, exactly what I needed to do. That included helping the other inmates, helping those that suffer from addiction, helping them find greater self-confidence, teaching them these self-help techniques, and that I would get out in 5 years. I would find love again. I would be able to be an entrepreneur again and find success again, as long as I would be honest and transparent about my experience and everything that I went through. So I woke up from that dream. I called my attorney and I said, I want to take a plea deal. He said, Shane, I think you can beat this. There's a reason why the feds didn't prosecute you. Your PPM's really good. I think you can beat this. And I'm like, it doesn't matter if I can beat it or not. I did the wrong thing. And I got to pay the price. So I took a plea deal, and I pled to 7 second-degree felonies. And my attorney's like, Shane, they'll run them concurrently. What that means is, like, they'll run them together. It'll be just like you have 1 to 15. Well, the judge didn't see it that way. The judge ran 4 of them consecutive, which meant I was looking at a minimum of 4 years, a maximum of 30 years. And in the state of Utah, it's indeterminate sentencing. And what that means is it's totally up to a board of pardons, 5 people that decide your fate. They decide how long you're going to be in there, somewhere between 4 years and 30 years. And that's a pretty big unknown when you go to prison and you don't know how long you're going to be in there. But I had this dream, and I felt confident that 5 years was what I was told. And I saw the Board of Pardons in December of 2016. I had been incarcerated for 18 months at the time, and they gave me what's called a rehearing to see him again in April of 2020. I got arrested in April of 2015, and then in April of 2020, when I saw the Board of Pardons, I got notified that I was getting released exactly 5 years. And so I got out, and the first thing that I thought I was going to do was, publish my book and tell my story. But the more I read my own book, the more I'm like, hey, you got to apply these principles in your book, in your own life, show that you can use these principles coming out of prison, that they work, and then publish your book. So I started a company. I started a door-to-door business where I helped, young people. You've heard of these guys that work for Vivint or whatever, similar company. I helped 18 to 25-year-olds in the summer, taught them how to go out and sell a security product, home security product. And that's what I did. And I just sold my interest in that business about 2 months ago. So that's the whole story without giving you everything that's in my book.
Well, I definitely encourage people to check out the book. So how long, or and you probably mentioned, and I missed it. How long? Yeah. So you got out of prison, you went and decided, okay, before I can do the book or before I can show others, coach others or get mentorship, I have to prove the principles work. How long did you take to do that, or how long were you in the security,
So
or the security business?
yeah. So what happened is, and people don't, many entrepreneurs, they want to be entrepreneurs and they don't understand, well, how do I start? I had no money. Nobody was going to give me any money. So the only thing I could do is go work for somebody. So I went and worked for a door-to-door company. I became the president of sales in pretty short order in about 6 months of this door-to-door company. And about 12 months into that experience, I went to the owner and I said, hey, I feel like you need to change this, this, and this, and make these adjustments. And if you do, it's going to be great. And I really like being here. But at the end of the day, I'm an entrepreneur. And so, if you want me to continue to stay here, one, make these changes, but two, I want in on the business. If I help you grow the business, I want in on the business. He didn't want to make the changes. And so about a year in from there, I left. I started my own investment firm called De Novo Smart Home. And I did a partnership with Brinks Home Security and ran that for a couple of years. And so 3 years in all from start to finish, but 1 year as an employee for somebody else's business. And so, my whole mission was at that other business, I'm just going to provide an enormous amount of value so that they'll offer me equity and bring me into the deal. That was my goal. When they wouldn't do that, then I decided that I would go and start my own business. But I wanted to give them the option to bring me in as a partner. And they decided that they didn't see the value. I don't know what they decided, but once they decided not to do that, then I knew what my marching orders were. And that was, okay, go start your own thing. So that's what I did.
Awesome. Well, sounds like definitely was quite the path that you took, and definitely a different path and a lot of learnings along the way. So now, as we've kind of caught up to the present day of your journey, and even and seeing where things are headed, great time to transition to the two questions I always ask at the end of each episode, which first question I always like to ask is, along your journey, and probably know the answer to this one because we already covered it, but along your journey, what was the worst business decision you ever made, and what'd you learn from it?
Well, gal, I made a lot of bad decisions, but I'll give you one specific. So I bought 300 plus mortgages in Indiana and Ohio, secured by residential homes. And I didn't go and look at those properties. And I didn't do as much due diligence as I should have done. And ultimately, what I learned from that is never buy something that you haven't seen or done the proper due diligence on, because I ended up losing a ton of money on that particular deal. So always know what you're getting into. But the overall worst decision I made was to not be transparent and honest with my partners, with my investors. Honestly, if you're not upfront, transparent, and honest, it will ultimately catch up to you at some point or another.
No, I think that's definitely a good mistake to learn from, and a great takeaway. Second question now that I'd like to ask is, so now if you're talking to somebody that's just getting into a startup or a small business, what'd be the one piece of advice you'd give them?
Surround yourself with a group of mentors, people that have been there, done that, especially if you can find people that are in a similar space, and get them on your team. As far as just as a mentor, create a mastermind group so that you have smart people that you can go to that can help you along your path as you're starting down your entrepreneurship path. It's always best to learn from those who have been there, done that, and you can learn from their mistakes, and oftentimes it will catapult your success.
No, I think that's definitely a great piece of advice and a great takeaway. So, well, now as we do wrap up the episode, if people want to reach out to you, they want to be a customer, they want to be a client, they want to be an employee, they want to be an investor, they want to be your next best friend, any or all of the above, what's the best way to reach out to you, contact you, find out more?
Yeah, I mean, I'm on all the social platforms. The platform I probably use the most is Instagram. It's just Shane Baldwin _ You can find my book on Amazon. You can DM me on Instagram. I respond to every single DM that I get every single day. I don't go to sleep until I've responded to all emails, text messages, or DMs. So I'm in a position where I can do that now. So I'm happy to help people. That's my whole mission. My whole goal is to help people recognize the divinity within themselves.
Awesome. Well, I definitely encourage people to reach out, make a new connection, support a great business. If nothing else, make a new best friend. So with that, thank you again for coming on the podcast. It's been fun. It's been a pleasure. Now, for all of you that are listeners are out there, if you have your own journey to share and you'd like to be a guest on the podcast, we'd love to have you. So just go to inventiveguest.com, apply to be on the show. Also, make sure to click share, subscribe, leave us a review, helps us to reach even more startups and small businesses, help them along their journey of success. And on that note, if you ever need help with your startup, your small business, with patents, trademarks, or anything else, feel free to go to strategymeeting.com, grab some time with us to chat, and we're always here to help. Well, thank you again, Shane, for coming on the podcast, and wish the next leg of your journey even better than the last.
Thanks, Devin. I appreciate it.